Well, good morning again. I have a little pithy sentence to begin with today. Ready? Asking wrong questions leads to wrong answers, in a sense, right? Asking the wrong question can send you down the wrong path, right? Which is ultimately a wrong answer. If you ask the wrong question, see, here's the thing. If you ask the wrong question, we are creative people. And so you will find an answer. Like, you'll give yourself an answer. That's what we kind of do. But it's typically not very helpful if it was the wrong question to begin with, or just plain wrong. And so our goal always in approaching the Bible would be to ask good questions, right? You want to ask good questions of the text. This is where, right, the word that you'll always hear a lot, like keep things in context, right? Like, what is the context? See, this helps ask a good question. And we need to ask good questions. And so here's a good question, right? What or how do you do that? Right? The first question, if I need to ask good questions, how can I learn to ask good questions? That's a good question. Come on. Pat myself on the back. And I'll tell you, when it comes to to the topic of the Bible reading, one of the earliest steps, as I just started to say it, in figuring out how to ask good questions is getting the genre correct. Understanding this word genre, right? And I'm sure, most of you actually do a lot of this very intuitively, very often. But getting the question of genre correct is so important in so many areas of life, right? And what does that word genre mean? It typically means, right, it's the idea of like a type of thing or a kind of thing. Type or kind, and genre is used for categorizing things. It helps us to put things in the right spot based off the type or the kind. This is where this word genre comes from. And see, genre is extremely important. And let me give you an example here. So imagine looking in your newspaper and seeing this like little headline: a bear mauling massacre in the Treasure Valley. A bear mauling massacre in the Treasure Valley. But you look where you're at in the newspaper and you're in the sports section. And you realize that in basketball this week, the GFA Grizzlies defeated the Centennial Baptist Mustangs 110-20. It was a mauling. See, and because you're in the sports section, and because you're in the genre of sports, your questions are starting to be answered for. Like, you already know what you're asking because you're saying right there, sports section, the headline, you have questions. Oh, well, what was the score? What was the score in that? Who was the MVP of the game? Right? Who was the MVP? I wonder who they play next. See, the genre of it gives you your questions and how you look into it. But see, what if that same headline, the exact same words in your paper that morning was the headline for the outdoor news? And so now all of a sudden you quickly have different questions. Well, where did it happen? Did someone die? How many people died? Did they catch the bear? See, the genre, your entire framework of what you're reading is being changed, and the questions you're asking. Because if you're in the outdoor section and you see that and you're asking, well, I wonder what the score was. I wonder who they play next. I wonder if there's any playoff implications of the, like you're asking totally wrong questions because you've misunderstood the genre. The question of genre is absolutely critical in all areas of life, really, but especially in the interpretation of the book of Revelation. Getting that right helps set up your questions. Getting it wrong leads to asking all types of questions like, well, I wonder when the world's going to end. Oh, and when's the rapture going to occur? What's the timeline events leading up to all this? If we misunderstand genre, we end up asking our own questions based off what we want to ask, where if we understand genre, maybe the whole way we frame things changes, just like it would if you were reading a sports section or if you were reading outdoor news. Now, the interesting thing here, right, is you're pretty good at intuitively discerning genre all the time. But Revelation is a little tricky because it actually has multiple genres, which is not entirely difficult for you, but Revelation's even more tricky because of its time distance. It was written so long ago with multiple genres, is sometimes we have a more difficult time discovering or discerning the genre that book is. But it's nonetheless vitally important. But like I said, there's very good news, because believe it or not, as soon as you kind of get up to date, like you're very good at discovering genre. Do you know that? Like you are excellent. You do it automatically multiple times a day. Guess what? You couldn't live if you were constantly not figuring out genre and categorizing. See, if I start right now and I say, hey, I want to tell you a story, Joy. Ready? A long, long, long time ago, in a land far, far, far away, there once lived a sweet little princess. One morning she woke up and a big green frog jumped on her windowsill. And the frog said, "Oh, princess, I have a story to tell." Wait, stop. Frogs can't talk, Nathan. What do you... Stop. I don't even want to hear this. This is so stupid. You don't do that. And you're not even stumbled by the fact I said the frog began to talk, because you knew I was in the genre of fairy tale. You knew exactly what I was doing, and you weren't thinking for a second, that's not right, because you got the genre. You're very good at this. You're very good at it when... Now Jake wakes up and he's like, I want to know the score to the BSU football game. And he goes to his TV and he turns on the History Channel. And he's sitting there watching for a while. And Joy's a little worried. And he doesn't do that because he knows like who does sports news? He goes to where sports is done. You don't go turn on Comedy Central for the weather, because Comedy Central doesn't deal in weather. Genre, types, kinds, categorizing things. You do this all the time. When you go to the mailbox and you pull out that mail and it says, "Great deal, 0% interest." You're like, credit card scam, whatever, marketing, and you throw it away. But when you see handwritten letter to your name and you see another name, and you're like, oh, this is a letter for me. You live making genre determinations all the time, and you're really, really good at it, is what I'm trying to get to you. Now, in the last 15 years, we have been thrown way off. And see, some of you, I know, some of you, in the older generation, like because of genre, you are just all fit to be tied. Because like a Taylor Swift song comes on the Country Channel, and you're like, that is not country music. That is not country music. That's my point. And you're like, what? This is not genre. Because when you go to your genre, you're knowing what to expect and you're like, that ain't country. See, genre happens all the time. We use it all the time. And you're really, really, really good at it. And so today I want to jump in a little bit and talk about the genres of Revelation, because there's multiple genres. And when we get the genres right, you will start asking the right questions. And so the first genre of the book of Revelation is that it's epistle. What's that? Everybody's like, what's that? See, I put it up there. A letter. All the letters of Paul and Peter, the whole, like, apart from the Gospels, all of the New Testament, it's letters. An epistle. And the first genre for you to grasp fully of what the book of Revelation is a letter. And see, we know this kind of right from the beginning in Revelation, first chapter, verse 4. I mean, we see it. He says, John, to the 7 churches in the province of Asia, grace and peace to you. See, this is like you opening up a letter, or you beginning, and you putting, Dear Steve. Like, it's a letter. But you know what? If you did that in the ancient world, they wouldn't know what the heck you're doing. Because that's not how they wrote letters. They all wrote all of the letters in the New Testament, except like Hebrews and they follow. There is a standard, a very well standard way that you write a letter. Just like you guys know, there is a standard way our culture writes letters. Now, listen, I think their way is better sometimes. Because don't you hate getting a real official letter? And you have to flip the 2 pages to see who it's from? Because we don't start with our name. We're just Dear Steve, today I was thinking, and you're like, man, who is writing this to me? But in the ancient world, all letters, go look now in your New Testament, and you can find ancient letters from the world, is they're always, they start with who's writing and to who. So I, Paul, write to you in Ephesus. And I, John, write to you in the 7 churches. This is just how they wrote letters. And see, this is important. It's important because this genre begins to set the stage for understanding it and asking the right questions. Because when you know you're dealing with a letter, you're just automatically set with the questions. Well, who wrote it? Oh, John wrote it. Who's he writing to? And then here's the big one. Why is he writing this letter? It just follows. See, this is what I mean, is just, as soon as you get genre, these things just naturally follow. You don't have to work them up. You're just oh, well, who wrote the letter? Who did he write the letter to? I wonder why he wrote the letter. And I want to say this, because when it comes to the book of Revelation, if an interpretation completely ignores or overlooks the original audience, you may be asking the wrong questions. If it completely ignores the 7 churches and the Christians that were living in the first century, you might be asking the wrong question. Because we can never overlook that there were real people in a real set of 7 churches in real Asia Minor that were in the middle of real circumstances, and they were facing real challenges, and they had real questions, and they were receiving a letter from their pastor about what was going on. There is no context for the book of Revelation that ignores the fact of real people in a real situation at a real time receiving a letter from their real, quote-unquote, how loosely used pastor at the time. Real things were happening. And see, that genre forces us to remember that. And we ask the right questions when that happens. The second genre that we find in the book of Revelation is prophetic literature. It's prophetic. And we get that right there from the verse before, Revelation 1:3. Blessed is the one who reads aloud the words of this prophecy. And guess what? It concludes in Revelation 22. Revelation 22:10. Then he told me, do not seal up the words of this prophecy of the scroll, because the time is near. Another message for another time, right? Both of them talk about the time being near. Near to who? Well, to the people he was writing the letter to. But see, I say that it's the genre of prophecy or prophetic. What goes into your mind when I say that? Do you hear, be honest with you, do you sometimes quickly think like future or prediction? See, today it's a very common thing. We hear this word and we have like a whole culture around this word, and we jump to what we think this word means very quickly, and we jump to prediction. But you know, if you take all of the Old Testament usage, and yes, scholars have done this. You can this has been done. This isn't like I'm giving you some thoughtful. No. People are super nerds on the Bible, and they go track down every Hebrew and Greek word. Yes, they do that stuff, and then they categorize it in neat graphs. Yes, so over 80% of the Old Testament usage, where there is prophesy or to prophecy, or I'm going to prophesy, is so all prophecy in the Old Testament, over 80% of it refers always to forthtelling, which is delivering God's message in the present situations, dealing with what's happening right now, and has nothing to do with the future or prediction. Over 80% of prophecy is about what's going on right then at that time, not about the future. So in the Old Testament, more than 4 out of 5 times, prophecy is always just talking about right then. Usually, the big chunk of prophecy is a prophet standing before the people of God gathered, pulling out the Old Covenant, the Testament, the 10 Commandments, and saying basically, you guys aren't doing this right now. I'm telling you. You're not doing it. You need to be doing this. What are you guys doing? This isn't right. This isn't what God called us to do. You need to be. That's like the vast majority. It's calling people right then at the moment to something. And so let me give you a much better definition of what prophecy is and how prophecy almost always functions, so that we understand prophetic literature, but then we also apply it to Revelation. That prophecy, you can boil it down to almost always doing 3 things. Prophecy is always dealing with who God is. It's always talking about what God desires. And it's always giving some implication of what God wants you to do. This is what prophetic literature is. It's pointing to who God is. Now go back and think like Isaiah and some of these beautiful think of what happens, and even think of the book of Revelation. See, this is why the whole first chapter is doing nothing but telling you who God is. Because prophetic literature tells you who God is. Prophetic literature tells you what God's desire is. And Revelation tells us throughout, and especially at the end, guess what God's desire is? To be with you, to bring heaven to earth, to be with you, to bring justice and goodness and redemption to the world. But guess what? It also tells us what he wants from us. Prophetic literature is telling you who God is. It's telling you what God desires, and it's telling you what he expects from you. And the book of Revelation is doing all those things, and it's telling you that it expects you to faithfully follow the Lamb, even in difficult situations. To be a witness to Jesus Christ, regardless of what's going on. Who God is, what God desires, and what he wants us to do. And I love He's a New Testament scholar, Richard Bauckham. He boils this down to, so he gives like another angle from the jewel of what is prophecy. He says prophecy is always doing two things. It's comforting and it's challenging. So when you think prophecy is occurring, it is trying to either probably comfort you and probably do both, or it's trying to challenge you. It's not just trying to tell you about something in the future. The whole book of Revelation begins with this word that basically says, blessed is the one that reads this. And, right, one version says, and take it to heart. Another one says, do. But, like, the Greek word there is obey. Like, it's telling you, here's some prophecy, and I want you to obey it. And just for fun, how do you obey predictions? How do you obey them? How do you do it? Like, 10 years from now, it's going to be a big earthquake. Obey this prediction. And you're like, well, I don't know how. And the whole book at the very beginning in the first 3 verses is setting up for you to live something right now. One commentator writes, the prophet's primary task was to always be evoking an alternative consciousness in the present. Old Testament scholar Michael Fishbane, who did this whole entire work of biblical interpretation through the Old Testament. Prophecy often draws on past covenant traditions to address the present moment. Prophetic literature is always for right now. Comfort, challenge to the Christians hearing it right then, right at that time. And then we have a third genre. And the first 2 genres are kind of encapsulated within this genre. It's how it's like overarching communication is within kind of this genre, and that's the genre of apocalyptic. So we go back to that word that we've heard a lot in the past few weeks, which in the original Greek, it just meant uncovering or unveiling something, which today in our culture means like some big, huge disaster has occurred. But guess what? In like kind of scholarly genre writing, it also has a third usage, and that is like a form of literature, like you would say poetry, narrative, prose, apocalyptic. There is a specific categorization in the first century of what's called apocalyptic literature, and it was in its heyday from 200 BC to about 200 AD. In those 400 years, we have all of these types of documents of a mass amount of what we would call apocalyptic literature, which went out of like practice around that time. So you have this, so all during the first century, apocalyptic literature was very prevalent. People wrote a certain way, just like the hint for you today. If you ever opened up a book and you said, in a land far, far, far away, a long, long time ago, you just know, oh, that's fairy tales, We're the same way when you hit certain cues, you go, oh, yeah, apocalyptic literature. Like they knew what was going on. This is a classification. But let me give you like a quick $2 definition of what the basis that encompasses what apocalyptic literature is. And that is that it's messages. It's messages of heavenly realities, or we could say transcendent truths. Realities and truths that hang throughout creation, that are given through vivid symbols and images, almost always to an oppressed people to encourage them. This is where the genre of apocalyptic literature began. It began in around 200 BC during all the Maccabean revolt and everything, because they just believed like the Messiah was going, and if they just, held true to the old covenant, that this would cause God to come. But then they're like doing this for hundreds of years. They're trying, and they're realizing God's not coming. And Rome is ruling, and they are hardly a nation. And so all of a sudden at the time when the Jewish people are oppressed and don't have their own, they start writing, and there's other ones where they start writing. And it always is written with this big veiled, and guess what? There's always this cosmic battle in apocalyptic literature. Big things, cosmic war in this one and that one. And guess, and there is apocalyptic literature outside the Jewish and Christian world, but guess what? It's pretty common in all Jewish and Christian apocalyptic literature. God wins. So big, huge war. Now think about it, always written to people that are thoroughly oppressed and on the bottom rung. And it's like, yeah, there is terrible things and there is a big war happening. God wins is basically the message. It's a message of a heavenly reality, and it's filled with symbols and images, and there's always this cosmic battle. And see, we know that the symbols are important because many times throughout the book of Revelation, John stops and interprets the symbol for you right away. He says, hey, there's 7 stars and there's 7 lampstands. And he says, hey, by the way, those are the 7 angels of the churches and the lampstands are the 7 churches. Like, he stops and he lets you know. He tells you, like in chapter 12, because right on the scene comes this big dragon. And you're like, oh my God, a 7-headed dragon, and whoa, what's going on? It's the ancient serpent of old, the devil, the Satan, by the way. Like, he stops and lets you know. He's painting and he's like, okay, this is what this is. He even does it with the mark of the beast, because there was no, he says the number and everything. He says, basically, by the way, that's Nero, just so you know. He explains his images throughout. And see, this apocalyptic literature, which covers the epistolary and prophetic nature of the book housed in apocalyptic language, it's a way of shocking and grabbing your attention. It would be like modern day, in one sense, right? To make a quick connection, right? It's like modern day political cartoons. Because if you draw the figure and you put a really big, huge elephant ears on them, like you're trying to like you take an image and you distort it and you blow it out for the purpose of conveying meaning to it. That's apocalyptic, vivid imagery. Apocalyptic literature is not narrative literature. This is why the book of Revelation really isn't doing anything with timelines, or it's not chronological events. If you read, and one thing I always challenge, like I've been doing it for the past 2 weeks in my morning devotion, like just read through the book as fast as you can in one sitting. Take you 1 hour. Maybe you'll actually start seeing like, wow, actually the end of the world comes like 6 times. Like, yeah, because it's not giving, like the world ends in chapter 6 at the end of the 6th, like stars falling, sky rolling up, mountains disappearing. Like, I mean, it's like, that's not going to happen. And then it's constantly giving you, like, it's not telling you like this linear story, because in 5 spots it gives you basically the world and everything was judged and the world was over. And then it starts back up again. And you're like, wait, what happened? And then it ends and everything and it starts back up again, because it's just giving you this vivid imagery, trying to communicate some very simple things. It's epistle, it's prophetic, it's apocalyptic. There is a simple message to the book of Revelation that lets us know that God is going to win and to be faithful. Shouting time and time again through the book of Revelation is the realization the world is not right. Empires come. Babylon, maybe we'll get there next week and we'll really talk about Babylon. Babylon appears to be ruling and reigning at every time in human history. There's never a time that an empire has not been ruling and reigning that is not God's kingdom. And so Babylon is always up to things. There's terrible things always happening. But the Lamb is on his throne. God is going to win. God will make everything right. You know, there was another terrible, terrible situation over in Africa, the persecution and everything that goes on. And see, a section like, I believe it's chapter 6, to tell someone whose family member was just mutilated and martyred right now, but to tell them, do you know that they have woken up in the presence of Jesus and he has robed them and they are with him right now and he wipes away every tear. See, it's a message of things are bad, but God is on his throne and he is making things right now, even though we don't always see it. And then comes the challenge, follow the Lamb even though the night is dark. And the epistle and prophetic and apocalyptic genre of that is doing all that, trying to communicate that simple truth. And as I close, I would state this. As we stand at the threshold of revelation, don't be distracted by asking wrong questions that the genres really don't call for, but instead embrace that it's a letter, that it reminds us that God speaks to real people in real places facing real trials. People just like us. That it's prophecy, that it tells the truth about who God is and what he desires. And it tells how we are to live right now, faithful to the Lamb in a world that pulls us in every other direction. And that it's apocalyptic. That the visions with their vivid symbols of stars, lampstands, dragons, fine linen, they aren't meant to scare or confuse, but to pull back the curtain so we can see the ultimate reality. Jesus Christ is already on the throne. His victory is sure and his people share in it. No matter how dark the world becomes, the Lamb has already triumphed. See, and that's our hope too. Whatever is pressing in on you right now, fear about the future, your current situations, all that weight of the very present, the temptation to sometimes look the other way or compromise. Revelation reminds you the end of the story is not destruction, but renewal. Not abandonment, but God's presence, not defeat, but victory in Christ. Lift up your eyes, church. The one who walks among the lampstands walks among us. He is faithful. He is with us. And he will make all things new. Let's pray. Lord, again and again, draw our attention to the beauty of Christ found in the book of Revelation. The one who joins in and assumes the exact same authority as the one that's been on the throne from the beginning, the Lamb, Jesus Christ. Lord, let everyone hear in this room words from you that Jesus isn't worried. He's not anxious. He's not insecure. He's not afraid. He's not wondering. Jesus is really confident, knows exactly where all this is going. He doesn't, however, shame us in acting as though bad things and difficult things aren't real and that they don't affect us. Jesus Christ is intimately aware of the evil of this world. Took it upon himself, felt it and experienced it in every way. He makes no suffering light or little. Lord Jesus, we look to you, the one that takes scars and turns them into trophies, the one that redeems pain, the one that with a gentle swoop of his thumb wipes away every tear. Lord, let us as the church feel comforted by the revelation. Let us all also be challenged to not go after Babel, to not follow the world, but to follow the Lamb wherever he may go. Amen. Let's close with a song, church.